first of all, when I sat down to play Dragonflight, I knew that I didn't want the typical WoW experience that I wanted. And the best way to get to that was to play differently. When I came back in Legion, I played differently than I did when I left in Pandaria, and I found that it was really great. And I've had trouble pivoting how I play while I play a game because it feels wrong. It feels like I'm giving up on the right way, right? That I was playing correctly, and anything other than that is less correct. So I kind of have had a tendency of having to leave an MMO, at least briefly, to come back and experience it differently. Final Fantasy is my dominant MMO. It is the majority of what I spend time playing, and I've started getting into the story, and I had questions about, well, I came from WoW. Is the WoW story something I would enjoy as well? So what I found was I'm just going to do it, and a couple of you have been really great at recommending it. The number one legitimate recommendation is just go watch Novel. Just go watch Novel videos, and I have. Or just go read the books, and I'm doing it. That's not a solution. This idea that the best text, the best way to enjoy a game is log out of that game and go play another game feels wildly frustrating. And so I've been trying to, okay, well, even if it's a lesser version, how do I get to the lore in game? And it feels like there's not necessarily a clear answer to that. But with Dragonflight, this was a chance to go into an expansion and see if I could get it out of this expansion, because this is their newest writing. So just because they did or did not put the story in game clearly and easy to get to in 2004 or 2008 or 2012 or whatever, I don't necessarily want to hold a game to its strengths or weaknesses of the past. I want to hold it to what it is right now. And so I decided I would take on Dragonflight lore. Now, I did want to have some prep, so I did watch some Noble and I read some videos about like kind of what the dragons were. But largely the game's done a pretty good job of exploring a lot of the basics. They've introduced all of the characters really clearly. They've introduced their motivations really clearly. And so like I kind of came in with that, and we'll get into kind of how they did in a minute, but my goals were to take on the story in a way that is different than every other expansion. The way I've played launch historically, on average, is effectively boost through the story, skipping everything you can. As soon as you've gotten everything you want out of the zone, move on to the next zone, experience-wise, race to cap, find a manual group of friends, hard queue into heroics, gear up, and then ultimately prep for raid. Next expansion, race through the story, grind the gear, prep for raid. Over and over and over. Shadowlands felt like they tried to move to a story, and BFA halfway through felt like they moved to like a campaign quest, and Legion felt like they had class quests, so like they've had manual forced story in the past. But the escape key is a powerful thing. And so even where they've tried to tell me a story in the past, I've largely been able to ignore it. I've gone back and run Lich King dungeons for time walking or leveling an alt or whatever. And I'm like, Sylvanas is in this dungeon. That's weird. I probably should have known who that was more than when they like made Sylvanas the like be all end all. But I didn't, because ignoring it means that just because they showed something in your character doesn't mean it went in your brain. The other expectations is I was planning on playing the story first and then getting through my typical experience. Because I woke up sick Monday morning, I found that it was hard to want to play the number of hours. So my plan was 90 hours from launch. Launch is at 5 p.m. I'll hop on at like 3, so let's call it about 4 o'clock as far as where my attention span is. And 90 hours later, at about 10 a.m. Friday morning, I'm going to take off. In that time, I thought I could get to more stuff. I honestly did. So let's talk about what I got to this week. First of all, I did clear the entire story quest. All of it. I cleared all of the post-story kind of just stuff that MMOs do where they say, go try grinding reputation. Go try doing a daily, and they just introduce you to the content. I cleared multiple side story hubs. I leveled some professions. gathering and crafting. I have my alt is in the capital city already. I did everything in the game to a little degree, really nothing to a complete degree, with the exception of the things I would have traditionally done. I have not touched any of the dungeons. I have not begun chasing gear. I'm only in 319. I have not begun looking at the raid prep and what all I can do. I have not started hard grinding reputations with the best reputation for me. I've not speed leveled any alts to cap. Anything that I would have done in my previous version, I've kept that version of me at bay. The next step is to go ahead and start chasing, leveling things, and pushing power, slamming rep, optimizing the fun out of the game. Like, that's a part of me that's the phrase, but I do have fun doing that. I have fun referring to the Wowhead thing, laying out my spreadsheet, having my task list, and just checking things off. I'd love to just start kind of completing the picture. I would also love to kind of boot up all the things which I've been running and start going through and strapping down and getting all the stuff cleared, all these side quests, which is a great source of rep. Great source of all sorts of things. And I'd love to go start kind of clearing the rest of this and finish the way I played this way. Take all these side stories in stride. I've been having fun with them. People die. People don't die. It's been a blast, and I want more of it. So, when I've talked about in the past, how do you review an MMO? I think there's kind of 3 big reviews that could really be broken into 4 parts. The first is your initial impressions. We're talking somewhere between 8 and 40 hours. The amount of time they would put into a single-player game, more than tasting it, but definitely less than comprehending it. Where are you at? And so that is what this is. This is my initial impressions. What do I think so far? The next 1 to 2 reviews are, how is it going? You could do one of these once you've kind of hit what your definition of completion is. So if you're a raider, maybe you cleared the first raid. If you're not, maybe you've run everything up to a reasonable Mythic Plus level. And the final review is, how did it turn out? And that's a looking back. That really, you can't know until we know how many patches were. What were the lessons learned? What will they do moving forward? Where are we going next? What do we get to keep? They've said that Dragonflight will not have a borrowed power system, and instead they're reintroducing talent trees. But if talent trees are something that we have talent points, and then halfway through the expansion, they add gear that gives us more talent points, and at the end of the expansion, they get rid of talent trees, and the gear with more talent points loses that attribute, then effectively talent trees could turn out to be just another borrowed power system. So there are things we can talk about 2 years from now that we cannot possibly know yet. There's no way to know yet. So I'd like to go back after I have a complete picture at these kind of middle and late stage reviews and do this again. Because I can tell you the initial serving has been good enough that I'm not quitting. So the plan would be to go back and check back in. But what did I honestly expect from World of Warcraft Dragonflight? World of Warcraft Dragonflight, to me, was them saying they've listened far enough in advance. They said they listened going into Shadowlands, but after the Preach interview, we learned how modular things are. There are a lot of things in Shadowlands that they likely released, knowing as they released them that they were going to be problematic. But they were already too close to their release date with too many hours invested to not just have to say, okay, then there is no expansion. I thought this game could not possibly be ready until early next year. They released it now, so I was kind of concerned it wouldn't be ready. And we still don't know. We don't know the quality of the raid. We don't know the quality of the balance. We don't know a lot of this. So my question is, like, what did I honestly expect from Dragonflight? What I expected was a callback to the original Blizzard Entertainment. what was World of Warcraft, the essence of World of Warcraft. Dragons, big, beautiful places. There's a bad guy we're gonna kill. A ton of loot to unlock, a ton of mounts to unlock, fun instances, easy to understand classes with a variety of gameplay, easy to understand loot systems with a variety of options at the base level, and as you work up, narrower and narrower choices, but I get to decide how high up that pyramid I decide is important to me. And I expected them to release a World of Warcraft game. I don't think that it is World of Warcraft's job to try to redefine the MMORPG. I think that is best left to indie devs. I think that is best left to the lofty goals of upcoming MMOs like the Riot MMO and Ashes of Creation. I think that's perfect. I just wanted Dragonflight to be a good World of Warcraft game. And to people that don't like World of Warcraft games, I didn't need it to appeal to them. I don't need it to reinvent itself every 2 years and throw everything else in the trash. Can there be expansion unique features like dragon flying or renowned with the Tuskar or whatever? Sure. Can more of those live into the future? Please, God, yes. We'll have to see. But can this just have a ton of callbacks to the things that are new, but more importantly, familiar? I don't want this to be some soap opera where they've added 10 levels of amnesia and now there's magic and there's witches and I don't need all of that. I just want it to be World of Warcraft. That's it. That's good enough. I don't know when a game just being good at being itself became not good enough. Every game now has to be this industry defining, referenced by non-gamers goodness. It has to be something that my mother calls about and goes, "What's Fortnite?" And if it's not that, screw it, delete it, dead game, failure. If the people who are playing it like it, and if they're adding more content that the people who are playing it like, that should be celebrated. If you're having fun in your game and the devs are having fun making that game for you, that's a complete circle. You're done. All I want is healthy, happy Blizzard devs to be healthy and happy making World of Warcraft for healthy and happy World of Warcraft players. Round and round and round we go. I don't care if people who don't like World of Warcraft don't like it. It's not something that has an impact on my marriage or my relationship with my friends. It's a video game. And that's what I want it to be. MMORPGs are my favorite genre, and I love that it's a chance for me to tackle how I feel about complex issues in a low-stakes environment. It's awesome. But that's what it is, a low-stakes environment. It's a game, and I love that. That's a good thing. I'm not saying that to be dismissive of it. When people say, oh, you care too much, it's just a game. No. You can care too much, and it can be just a game. You should care that much about things. It's awesome to nerd out about something. There's nothing more fun than watching a sporting event with somebody who cares way too much. But it's just a game. And that's amazing. It's fun to care about things that don't matter. It's exhausting for everything in your life to wonder where your next meal is coming from and will you make rent this month. It's really nice to be in a position you can care about things that don't, at the end of the day, matter. So did World of Warcraft Dragonflight deliver? Did World of Warcraft Dragonflight, so far, initial impressions, deliver on this? Absolutely. Absolutely. Wholeheartedly. It's just fun. It's just fun. If I hadn't been sick, I would have had trouble logging out to sleep. It's just fun. I love the Tuskar. I love dragons. I'm getting loot. My character feels powerful. Other characters feel powerful. I like playing with other players. I like that there's a point that I'm doing a daily and I get Torghast choices. I enjoyed the campaign quests. I've enjoyed the side quests. I've enjoyed the exploration. I like the references in it to past systems. I like some of the big changes like Dragonflight and crafting, but I like that those aren't everything. It feels like it's just a World of Warcraft game, but a really good World of Warcraft game. The zones are beautiful, they're big, the monsters are fun, It's got the right amount of density. I feel like I'm doing big pulls. I feel like I occasionally died to overpulling and being undergeared and standing in something and not paying attention and looking at chat. I feel like it didn't ask too much of me, but that if I wanted to be optimal, I could be. It just feels fun. Now, Shadowlands and BFA felt fun on launch, but this one feels different. Those felt like it's fun because it's new. This feels so far like it's sustainable fun. Sustainable, reasonable, repeatable fun. Like if they release a terrible 10.1 and 10.2, I could spend the entire expansion just going through 10.0 content. That's a really safe place to be. Now we're going to dive into the valley. We're going to do some good, then some bad, then some bad, then some good, and then talk about the future. My favorite moments have been some of the story moments, some of the story hiccups where I felt like I was invested in something. Caring about the narrative is something that I wasn't sure I'd get to. That was awesome. There were some really fun quests just mechanically where I laughed and I'm in these zones with the unexpected. And I'm ported to other places and the game's poking fun at itself mechanically. My class plays fun but familiar. My interactions with other players. My absolute favorite zone is the Azure Span, the third zone. Narratively, I felt like the first and the last zone were the high points. That it did a great job laying in a ton of lore up front. The beginning is the only part of every story that every player is engaged in. It's something that I heard Josh Strafe-Hayes say, and it makes a ton of sense. If you're going to be strong in any part of the story, you should be strong at the beginning, not the end, because that's the only part everybody does. And I do feel the beginning was very high stakes, and I was very interested in some of the rivalries and the things being laid out there. So the first zone was probably my narrative favorite, followed by the second. Followed secondly by the last zone, excuse me. But that third zone was my favorite zone. I like the people we interact with there. I like the way it feels. I like being in the zone. I like the monsters we face. I like the dailies I did there. I liked those. The Tuskar are some of my favorite people to interact with from when I very first met them back in the day. I adore them. That's my favorite things have just been being in the world. The world is my favorite things. And I think World of Warcraft is at its best when the star of the show is the world of Warcraft. When Azeroth is the best character. I think that's awesome. And I think Azeroth was on full display in Dragonflight so far. My biggest complaints. There's a quest that you need to sit on a caravan.
My clan, Clan O'Neill, is made up of those who feel a direct connection to our god Onara. She guided our founders, Maruk and Tira, to the Dragon Isles, and she has watched over our people ever since. The mystics of Clan O'Neill are initiated from many different clans, but we all followed Onara's call to serve her and our people.
I wish they talked more frequently. It's a neat idea.
The clans have their differences, but we share one culture. No matter our strengths and weaknesses, we are all Maruk.
In the second zone, and the pacing of the conversation is too slow. They should have had them talking. Even if it meant halfway through, that scene needed to end, and they pour it to the end like a typical quest giver. It felt weird that they stretched it out. I stayed through the whole thing. It was a neat idea. Execution needs to step forward. I do love that they gave dragon flying early, and that there's a lot of flight paths, and that the world seems easy to navigate. There are some things that feel like they could have been cleaned up if they'd spent more time testing, because multiple times when my dragon was going up a hill, walking up a hill, I got disconnected 3 times. 3 separate times over this week. But the biggest complaint I have is the quality assurance with the sound design. The gold, red, and blue dragon, I believe, are all on the effects track, and I keep my effects volume at 5%. When the dragons are just sitting around, they do a slash mount special type thing where they roar. They've got a big variety, so if you want to go in and use an add-on to mute it, it's not one sound file, it's several sound files. The green dragon, I believe they reused a track from some boss. I couldn't find it. The green dragon is on the dialogue track on your volume. Now, because I was trying to give them a shot, and I was trying to listen to the professional voice acting where it is, I have dialogue turned up. But what that means is, louder than any dialogue, louder than any voice, all the voice stuff is like, if I walk far away, they get quieter. If a green dragon roars anywhere near me, I cannot hear myself think.
I know what to do. What is the problem?
So besides the dragon roaring, who knows Dormu needs you?
On it. I think that went well.
Oh, out. Is there a way to turn down just that? This expansion is going to get nuts. If every person with a dragon has to sit around roaring and roaring and roaring. It's like you put every player in a helicopter. The music tracks are beautiful. Maybe I'll mute them long term, maybe I won't. But that green dragon, the dragon sounds in this game, anybody who likes dialogue or effects sounds, the loudest effects in the games are the dragons. So if you have your effects sounds turned up because you think effects are cool, screw all those people, screw all the sound designers that worked on effect sounds. Screw all the professional voice actors that got involved in dialogue. If you have any of that turned up, those dragons are going to ruin your day. And the problem with that is that's not a one-off problem. That's not a, well, once you're done leveling, it won't be a thing again. It's not, oh, this one cutscene's really loud. Those dragons are going to be the primary mode of transport for at least the next year, which means anytime you're idling in the main city where you can be mounted up, there are going to be people sitting on their dragons. They need to fix that, and that's the sort of thing that not pushing a game out based on a fiscal quarter might have made more sense. They should be on their own soundtrack. There should be, or they have their own. We have 1,000 options in the menu now. Make mount special its own filter and make sure all mount sounds are in it. So when people idle on mounts, I can just uncheck that. So what's my biggest fear then? Keeping the negative train rolling on this expansion that I've loved. My biggest fear is that this becomes BFA or Legion. That they drop the ball on some systems when we start to see the complete thing come out and how the raids turn out. That we end up with an arbitrary number of days between 100 and over 200 between patches. That this ends up being just 2 patches, which means any system they want to iterate on, such as the Renown or the crafting or whatever, doesn't really get a chance to grow into something meaningful, as opposed to 3 and 4 patch expansions. That anything meaningful in the story ultimately just gets written over or doesn't matter. My biggest fear is that somehow they come in with this much momentum, this many good things, and all the amazing and wonderful communication around all the interviews stops. And any negativity gets seen as, well, you just don't get it. Shut the community out. We're not going to develop. We're not going to communicate. We're not going to update regularly. During pre-patch, during beta, they were on the PTR balancing classes rapid fire. What if that all stops? My biggest fear is that they drop the ball and that everything I just said gets clipped out of context 2 years from now and I look like a moron for making some stupid, drastic mistake of having fun in a game. I don't think it's a big deal if you pay for a game, pay for 1 or 2 months sub, you love it, and then when you stop having fun, you unsub. That doesn't go back in time and make that not fun. If the rest of the expansion turns out not fun later, it doesn't mean you didn't have fun at the beginning. I had fun at the beginning of Shadowlands and BFA, and I talk very positively of that. I didn't like the way they played out long term. I'm allowed to feel both those things. But my biggest fear is that I have to feel that about 3 expansions in a row. To earn back the amount of trust and faith they need in the game, they need to not just knock this one out of the park all the way through, but they're still going to have a lot of haters. Well-earned, well-deserved haters. So then they got to knock 11.0 out. TBC and Wrath of the Lich King, back-to-back good expansions. 10.1 needs to be good. 10.2 needs to be good. 10.3 needs to exist and be good. My biggest fear is we won't get there. My highest hope is that the interviews really felt like they sat down and listened. Everything with Preach, everything with Annie, everything with... just everything I've consumed. Something does feel a little bit different this time. I have friends that have taken jobs there. I have friends who used to work there. I have friends that have worked there all the way through. And when I've had conversations with them, something does feel a little different. So if we can be making steps forward slowly, surely, that's a good thing. That's awesome. So that's what I want to see us get to. That's my biggest hope. So my hope and my fear are just opposite sides of the same coin. I want us to go back to going to BlizzCons. I want Blizzard of old, and I don't expect it overnight, but I want to see them laying the foundations. Good communication, good content, on a regular schedule. They've never been horribly good at that, but it's time. Manage your IP. Go back and leverage old content. Keep improving the new player experience. Keep welcoming people in and to return. Keep doing your job. Keep your head down. Keep working. The rest will take care of itself. And so, what would that look like? What would I hope to see next? What would I hope to see looking forward at 10.1, 10.2, 10.3? And what do I think they need to learn from this that ideally they're already working on and are already learning for 11.0 and beyond? I hope that each patch can feel big but optional. World of Warcraft has never struggled with putting the right amount of content into the game when content arrives. Patches are big. Expansions are massive. The amount of content in World of Warcraft expansions and patches are huge. They're massive. They're wildly big. Where they struggle is that they spend all this time working on something and they want people to try it, rather than recognizing that word of mouth is what made vanilla a like chronic and crippling success. It brought Blizzard to its knees. The Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King succeeded. And they succeeded because players could not help but go to lunch or dinner with a friend and say, dude, this game's so good, you should play it with me. I just want to have fun in the game. And if my friend hops on and wants to play in a different way, I want to go do that. And I don't want any of it to be mandatory. Please, God, do not make these renowned something where if you're not renowned 53, you can't go into the final raid of the expansion. More account wide. More options. If I like being in the world on my druid, which I do, and I find a piece of hunter gear, why is it not bind on account, bind on equip? Why can't I transfer that to my hunter and equip it? It's not fun to go do something again, and then my hunter finds the freaking druid gear. Let me play my way. Get out of your own way. That doesn't mean there can't be 20 ways to get to item level whatever, 10 ways to get to the one above that, 5 to that, and only 1 to get to the pinnacle. It doesn't mean there can't be systems that build. But stop saying there's only one path to climb that mountain. I want lots of content added so that I can pick and choose what I want to play. And just trust that your content is good enough that I will want to play it. Trust that these races are fun So I'll go race. And if they're not good enough that I won't do them without you locking raid progression behind them, then they're not good. So sit down and ask, how do we make them better? Not how do we force people to do them. So I just hope that we can get back to the WoW of old, when I felt like I did my fun with my friends, I prepped for the raid, now I'm going to go get my Netherwing rep. Now I'm going to go spend some time farming some rare drop recipe. I'm going to play my way on my time and have my goals. That's my initial impressions. I'm 30, 40 hours in. Don't think I'm more than 50. I'd love to loop back after I get that 100, 200, 300 hours in, and I've kind of completed all of this. I'd love to look back at the end of the expansion and see how it all turned out. But out of the gate, I am cautiously optimistic. I'm excited for what Dragonflight is. I'm excited for what it could be. I have concerns, but they're not overwhelming. I have complaints, but they're not unfixable. They're not foundational. They're execution. They're patchable. We've got the game on maintenance right now. They're doing an hour maintenance every day. They could be fixed in any one of those. I'm not arguing any of these systems fundamentally change it where, like, current raid loot can be traded to any other character or something goofy. I'm just arguing to let the exploratory part of the world be exploratory. If I find something off a rare, that's not game-breaking item levels. That's 350. Let it be that way. Let this game just be good at what it does. You don't have to break any of the core loops to get there. And I'm optimistic. And I'm excited to be playing World of Warcraft in addition to the other games I'm playing. And I think Dragonflight is so far a great addition into the franchise that is World of Warcraft.